Universities South Africa welcomes the National Student Financial Aid Scheme's decision to scrap the controversial direct payment system. This is after an investigation by the scheme's board of directors found an alleged conflict of interest between CEO Andile Nongogo and payment providers fintech company eNCA. Beneficiaries have been struggling to access funds, leading to a countrywide protest at universities by students. And to discuss this further, I'm joined by University South Africa CEO, Dr. Phethiwe Matutu. Dr. Matutu, good afternoon to you and thank you for joining us. We've now seen your response to what has transpired with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS in short, but there had been endemic problems with the scheme in terms of students being able to access the financial aid. In your view, do you think that this is a sign that they're remedying the challenges that students are facing?
Certainly, this is a positive move, which is very much welcome by the board of Universities South Africa. And the fact that the board of NSFAS has decided to accept the recommendations of the report wholeheartedly is very much welcome by Universities South Africa.
But what does this tell us, though? If there's conflict of interest, fiduciary duties obviously being flouted to the point where a CEO is now allegedly involved in a supply chain management process that should not have taken place in the first place. So it speaks of processes being flouted, Dr. Matutu. Is that not a concern to you?
That is a concern, of course, and the most important thing is to firstly look at the NSFAS policies, and the board is responsible for the policies of the organization, and see exactly, as it was pointed out, some of these policies were changed during the course of the processing of this tender. So in that case, then it's important that one looks at what really transpired, whether the board approved what transpired or not, and the staff members who were involved in exactly that. So I do think that one has to look at it holistically within the organization, as it has been recommended by this report, that they must look within the organization as well, from policies to the staff members who have got a bearing on this awarding of the tender.
Yeah, now the Universities South Africa is an umbrella body representing 26 universities in South Africa, and again, the challenges vary depending on the institution itself. I just want to talk about the missing middle and maybe the affordability threshold, where you find that students who ought to qualify, but because of the barriers with regards to the affordability threshold, they are not able to access finance. Is this something that needs to be reviewed, or is there a discussion around that, Dr. Matutu?
I do think that we need to look at the sustainability of the funding holistically, because right now, even the students who are within that 350,000 threshold, government is trying to control that in terms of accommodation, through accommodation capping, and at a huge expense for universities, which cannot afford that difference between that cap and what the actual residences together with food costs. So before we talk about adding the missing middle, we have to make sure that within the current threshold, NSFAS is sustainable. So right now, as I'm talking to you, there is more than 600 million rand, which is being owed to universities through this scheme, due to the capping of accommodation together with food. And certainly, those funds have to come from government. So we need to ensure that government has those funds before we talk about adding other students to it.
Yes, but the whole thing of repurposing budgets, we've seen that in the event of a crisis, be it because of the floods or any other natural disaster. So why is it, when it comes to the basic right of access to quality education that is enshrined in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution, funds are then not repurposed to ensure that students are not left out, albeit that universities obviously need to make up for the debt as well?
Yes, it's important to talk about government funding on this, but also it is important to look at other sources of funding, because if there's no money which is coming in, and also we experience a very slow growth in economy, the way in which we are experiencing, certainly there are issues of sustainability that we're going to encounter. So the most important thing is to look at all the possible ways in which funding of higher education can be looked at. So I've got nothing against it being funded by government, provided there are those funds. But what I'm outlining right now is the fact that even for those students which are have got income of less than 350,000, right now we're not experiencing that government is able to afford that right now.
Yeah, and the viability of this
the
is
the most important thing is for that to be affordable first, before we can add on anything to that. I don't know the maximum that government can afford, but for now, more than 600,000 rand is owed to universities through its residences, through this accommodation capping by NSFAS. And there's no way in which we can kick out students who cannot pay because we want to fund those students who can pay. That is really unfair. We need an NSFAS which is sustainable, which is efficient, and government which supports that NSFAS through clear staffing, infrastructure, good governance, so that we can have an inclusive higher education sector in the system.
Yeah, before we let you go, very briefly, what are the alternative resources or interventions to attract more income towards the fund to access quality education for as many as possible?
There has been a report which was produced by a ministerial task team to the minister, which outlined those different possibilities. There was issue of private sector funding, banking, loans, and also possible tax from various sources. And so far, it looks like very little has been done in terms of ensuring that that gets implemented. So far, we haven't had any results in terms of the possible implementation of those proposals. And of course, we know that these sectors, they operate within a very, very tight legal regime in South Africa. Hence, they are protected from any kind of demands. So firstly, they have to agree to whatever kind of proposals and see them viable for their businesses. So looking at that, and also there's a possibility of different types of taxes for the various individuals or businesses within South Africa. Because at the end of the day, who benefits from graduates which come from higher education institutions?
It's industry indeed. Thank you,
Africa.
Dr. Matutu, for your time. And we certainly hope that the issues will be resolved and to ease the burden of students, particularly that need financial aid and are largely dependent on government interventions. We are speaking to University South Africa's CEO, Dr. Phethiwe Matutu.